Hey, good afternoon. And on today's episode of Business Basics, my special guest is Dr. Ann Connors with Family Dentistry in Iowa City. Ann, thank you for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Glad to be here.
Hey, so Ann, tell us a little bit. You have been in practice for a little while, right? How many years now?
It's, yeah, a little bit more than a little while. It's been 27 years, 27 years.
Wow,
So
time flies by.
1993,
Yeah,
it's been very busy all of that time. It does fly by, you bet.
it really
And
does. So, Ann, tell me a little bit about you started your practice. How did you get into dentistry? And have you always? I think Dr. Van Beek, is he your partner too, or associate with you?
yeah, he's my associate, yes.
Yes. Okay.
And he's been with me for about 15 years.
Yep.
Um, I I am an Iowa native. I had growing up, I had a couple of dentists that mentored me, or that
Hmm.
I sort of looked up to. My orthodontist, my dentist, my brother-in-law happened to be a dentist, and so they kind of guided me along and suggested the field, and I explored it. I ended
Hmm.
up at the University of Iowa and had a great education at the College of Dentistry, of course,
Hmm.
um, and graduated in the mid 80s. And then in 93,
Hmm.
um, the 80s, very interesting time. It was middle of the farm crisis and financial. I mean, if you wanted to,
Right.
for Iowa and the Midwest, it was, the economy was really, really bad. I ended up
Hmm.
going to Florida for 5 years and practiced in Florida after dental school.
Okay.
And then an opportunity, serendipity. I had no plans on coming back to Iowa City, but I ended up back here, and I I happened to find a house when I was in dental school. There was a dentist down the street from me where I
Hmm.
lived, and his name was Dick Parrott. And I always adored this house that he had his practice in.
Uh-huh.
And so in 92 or something, I found out he was moving and building a new building. So I just went, what's this? I called him up. I just called
Right.
him up out of the, cold call, and said, what are you doing with your old building? So I set up my practice in 1993. I bought the house from him, and he moved his practice to East Iowa City. And
Hmm.
then I started from scratch as, I was, I don't know, 30 years old, something like that. But,
Right.
and so I've been in practice there for 27 years,
That's
ups and
amazing.
downs all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And a unique location with the house that you're in.
Yes, it's a 1903 four square house, in sort of the original plat, one of the early plats of Iowa City. So old
Hmm.
neighborhood, North Side neighborhood. So it's I thought I'd only be there about 5 years. I thought, well, I'll expand. I can always, and I thought maybe 10. Then I said 10 years, and now I think it's terminal for me after 27. But
Well,
it's
we
a
felt the same.
lovely.
It is. It's a gorgeous place, and I think some advice to dental students and who may be looking at starting their own practice. The trend
Yeah.
right now is to build this $1 million, multi-million dollar facility, take out a huge loan for it, and you went a completely different route. You went with this established older home, and it's been working great, right?
Yes, you're right on, Lee. I guess with you and your wife, your experience, you kind of understand this. But um, it was, I knew from the get go I was doing this the hardest way uh, uh, possible, by just starting from scratch. I didn't buy into a practice or join and work for someone, which I had for a while, but I didn't have an opportunity to buy in. So. Um, Yeah, I started with one chair and one employee, and
Hmm.
built it up. and I learned as I went, and then slowly expanded. And yes, right now, if I just opened my practice and I had a couple of $1 million in debt, it would be a pretty painful and depressing time during COVID, what we're going through.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And
and so I
unfortunately,
always had,
go ahead.
well, I've always tried to be a forward thinker and sort of get, what could happen, what's the worst case scenario, what's the, what are the possibilities. And so certainly 27 years ago, I was very careful about what I was doing, but I planned uh, as appropriately and as I always did, and slowly ticked away at it. And
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
grateful of that method. So grateful for that method.
Well, and Anne, I think something that we tend to forget, maybe when we're younger, right? We get swayed by all this glitz and glitter, and especially in the dental field, we have to realize that what our end product is that relationship that we're building with our patients. And you don't necessarily have to have the top of the line. I mean, I know in pediatric dentistry, kids tend to they kick up your furniture. You know what I mean? They sometimes tear things, and it's more about that relationship that you have and that you continue to build with your patients, and in our case, their parents. And they don't always expect to have swanky, if that makes sense.
Yes, exactly. I do know what that means. I mean, it's always good to have someone entering your business, and in my case, my practice, and have a good first impression. Um,
Always.
but as far as overwhelming them with, or tying yourself up with lots of good-looking stuff, but not having substance behind the stuff. So you're right
Right.
on.
Right.
Whatever you're doing in business, professional, it's in your community. Communication, honest, strong communication with your patients, your clients. You just can't go wrong with that. So
Right.
they will come to trust you. They will, if you listen to them, they'll listen to you, and it's a collaboration. And um, then over the years, yes, you decide what's important,
Hmm.
how you want to invest for the future, or invest in your business. And you do. I would say, I always I had it's hard. Those are some of the hardest decisions when it's coming to parting with money, or what direction you want to go. So
Right.
for me, I always looked at what would serve an investment in equipment, or practice techniques or technology. It's like, number one, how would it best serve my patients? And then
Hmm.
number two, would I enjoy using it? Would it make my life easier?
Right.
Um, so that's the yes. If you start with glitz right from the get-go, you're gonna be guaranteed one thing: a lot of stress, financial stress. That's
You
for sure.
are, and then you've let you've created a monster, because now you have to continue with that glitz, glitz, glitz the whole time. And you're so right. We're looking for efficiencies, right? If
Yeah,
we're going to buy a new piece of equipment, buy it because it makes us more efficient, because it processes X-rays quicker or uploads digital files faster, um, whatever that is. And then the other thing that we spend our money on is training our staff, because
yeah,
we want our staff to be well trained. They have
yeah.
to be.
Yes, absolutely. And when you do that, um, when you invest that time in their, not just what their purpose and their job description and their duties in the office, but you're also investing in their confidence, their self-confidence, and helping them. I mean,
Hmm.
over the years, I've been amazed at how fast people learn things that I thought, oh, they aren't gonna, or how are they gonna adapt? And then they love it and do it so
Right.
well, and they just feel terrific
Hmm.
about, expanding their knowledge. So that
You're,
worked very well, yeah, with staff.
and you're dead on there, Ann, when you say that you help build their self-confidence, because nothing tells our employees that we love them more so than saying, you know what, I want to keep you here and I want to train you so you can be better. And that's a huge pat on the back.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And with COVID, with the pandemic, there were a lot of things we just had to throw out.
Hmm.
But one of the biggest aspects, most important aspect of when we started seeing patients again after being closed, we were closed for 10 weeks in the spring.
Hmm.
Before we were coming back to see patients, what the most important aspect of that was retraining everyone and or
Hmm.
training in the new protocol and our expanded protocols and on cross contamination, and just also the new systems or the way I had to adapt the old systems for the new times. And
Hmm.
so when they came back to work on that or when they came into work to see their first patients on that Monday in June, everyone was a little nervous because it was all different, but they were so happy. They felt so good at the end of the day, the end of that week, because of the training and also knowing that we cared about each other and we wanted to take
Right.
care of one another in the office and then of our patients. So
Right. And the fact that you were able to reopen after COVID-19, because there's been a modest estimate that 10 to 15% of dental practices nationwide did not weather the storm. And that speaks to the fact that unfortunately, dentists, as other business models, if you don't have set aside funds for, our parents used to say a rainy day, right? You got to save your money for a rainy day. Um, but COVID-19 really proved that, is like, if you don't have those funds set aside, it could be bleak and it's not just dentistry, but you can see the businesses around the Eastern Iowa area that really just didn't plan for whatever, right?
well, who could have planned for a pandemic? I mean,
Oh boy. Right.
I put a lot of time and money into things that could go wrong, maybe with the economy. And I certainly was around in 2007, 2008
Right.
with the financial crisis then,
Hmm.
and the banking and all of that. And um, I remember then thinking to myself, gosh, I'm glad this happened at this time in my life and not when I'm 10 years older.
Right. So true. And then
But
wham, we get hit with
yeah,
this thing. Oh
yes.
my goodness.
Well, that's an interesting statistic. I did not know it was that high. I thought maybe just 2 or 3%, and those were like maybe doctors who wanted to retire. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's very rough. And I will expand on that. The day that we were told we had to close,
Hmm.
uh, before the end of that day, I had received a phone call from my banker and I had received a phone call from my accounting firm
Mm.
and my personal account, accounting firm. All of them called to check in, see how I was doing, and to say what we will be here to help you out. Okay. Now
Hmm.
they're all businesses. And
Hmm.
I'm their client. Um, but that did not happen overnight. I've
Right.
been with them and they
Hmm.
have been assisting me for years.
Hmm.
And I haven't gone shopping around for the cheaper this or that, or, this, jump from one ship to another. Um, I've had my people, so to speak, and
Right.
they have been there and have built relationships with me and vice versa. They've come to trust me and
Hmm.
our practice, and they've seen how we've operated over the years. And so at the end of that week, when it was pretty panicky, it was very
Hmm.
scary. When we did not know how long we were going to be closed, we weren't expecting to be closed. That was very traumatic. But it was so reassuring to have those professionals call me and kind of keep me, give me some advice,
Right.
um, uh, sort of reassure me that they would be there, but also be ready to go and get to work as far as doing whatever we could do together to keep my doors open, to get, have my payroll, my staff take care. And,
Hmm.
they just gave me financial advice again, as they've
Right.
always done. So,
Right. Right. I mentioned earlier that Polly and I gave a lecture this morning to dental students,
yeah,
and one of the questions that came up was, when we started our practice, we got a small loan to start with from a local bank, and then the business plan, they had some questions, so they kicked it out the first time, and we revised it, and then took it back a second time before it was approved. And one of the students asked us, they said, "Well, did you shop around for banks?" And we said, "No, we didn't. We went with a local bank, people that we've worked with before, that we've built up that relationship with, and we wanted to stay with a local bank."
yeah.
And over the years, just like you, we've had a great relationship with that banker. They know us. They certainly know our financials, and they were there for us every time we needed them. They were there, and that is so important.
It really is. And we don't know. I mean, when my banker talked to me, he said, this may be, this may be a tough situation for 3 months, maybe six
Hmm.
months. But where are we
Hmm.
now? It's looking now like it's going to be 12, 15 months, maybe longer.
Right.
So, and what you try and do throughout your professional career, whether it's in your working on your techniques or your medical arts, your business practices, um, you do walk through different scenarios. And
Hmm.
one of the and you oftentimes have to reach out to people for help or to help you sort of like what would happen if I did this, or what would this
Right.
look like. Okay. um, so yes, shopping around, sure, but and you may, if you don't have a relationship with the bank, you may want to do some research, whether it's a bank, an accountant,
Hmm.
lawyer, any of those people. You want them to have your back when the going gets tough at some point. Maybe, hopefully, the going doesn't always get tough,
Right.
or doesn't go bad. But they that dedication to the people in your community that are there and providing services for you is just invaluable. I can't emphasize that enough.
So
And
true. Yeah. So true. So, and COVID-19, you got through it. You're getting through it. I mean, extra precautions in place, obviously, in the office,
yeah.
protective equipment, all that. Um, but would you say that the bulk of the storm is behind us now, as far as your practice is going? I mean, are we kind of getting back into a kind of a better sense of things, of how they're going now?
Yeah, and there's a wonderful office at the American Dental Association called Health Practices Institute, and that, like, for your dental students you're lecturing to, I would certainly advise any young new dentist to stay involved with their organization, and the American Dental Association. In the HPI, they do a great job of gathering data. It's a small office within the ADA, but it's
Hmm.
economists, and it's fairly new. It's about 5, 6 years old. So that data is very interesting. And I would say I've been watching their national data as they've produced it on dentists.
Hmm.
Anything from how many dentists are getting infected, or staff with the virus, which is very, very low, by the way, um,
Right.
to practices that are closing, what's the volume of practice compared to, say, the same time last year. So
Hmm.
I would say certainly my practice has been on par, and maybe even surpassing a little bit some of that national data, surpassing it.
Hmm.
So that was reassuring to me. But
Right.
as far as the storm, us being ahead of the storm, no, I think, like everything, like every business in this country, for the most part, if you if you turn on the news, or if you read the data, read what is coming at us, I think that I may have, since being closed, I may have a couple of rough months here coming up, maybe 3 months.
Hmm.
But we kind of knew that with the timing. And thank goodness in the summer, we were closed and we opened up in summer. People were outdoors, and
Right.
the spread was not so grave.
Hmm.
Um, and so we were able to really make up for some lost ground. But boy, now winter is tough, and people are
Right.
afraid. Um, and all we can do is reassure them and continue doing what we do in the best way and the highest standards. And that's what we're planning on doing. So,
Exactly. Yeah, and hopefully that vaccine not too far away at this point, and then hopefully most folks will have confidence that the vaccine is for their best benefit, and we'll see, I guess. Right?
well, exactly. We know that, there is the other side of this. And that's when, I say this to my staff or to my children. um, you got to keep looking forward. Don't just look at, what's right in front of us that's maybe kind of challenging and perhaps sad at times, but
Right.
it will not go on forever. And
That's correct.
yeah, so you know what? It's a roller coaster ride, Lee. It's been up and down. And
So true. Oh
I
my
think we're
goodness.
heading into a little bit of
Oh my.
a down time, and it will go back up. And
It will.
it's all about resilience.
It is about resilience. You're so true in that, Ann. That's right. All right. One more question here before I let you go. So, over the years, what's your business takeaway? What's the one thing you've learned that you want to pass on to somebody else? And you've mentioned a bunch already, but I'll give you one more opportunity to say something else. Go ahead.
Um, yeah, I have touched on a lot of things. I think for me, um, realizing that I don't know everything about my own practice, about my own profession, let alone business and economics and things.
Hmm.
So I think what I have tried to teach when I mentor uh, my employees or pre-dental students or associates that have worked for me is, um, just know that you don't know all that much from the get-go, and then just keep learning throughout your life.
That's
Keep
right.
being curious,
That's right.
and don't, I guess that's humility. It's,
Hmm.
just always be a lifelong learner,
Hmm.
and just be curious. And for whatever that is, it may be a
Hmm.
new hobby, but in your business, it certainly is. And um, you won't burn out, for one
No.
thing. You
Right.
won't get tired of it. So, and you just keep getting better and better. And when challenges come up, like this one we're having right now, this economic challenge and health crisis, it kind of reduces some of the panic, because
Hmm.
that you've learned to be a problem solver.
Right.
And we got some big problems here. So,
We do, but we always have uncertainty.
yeah,
John Maxwell in his book Leader Shift talks about, as leaders, we had to be prepared daily to
yeah.
venture out into that uncertain territory. Um, that's part of why we lead, and that's part of the leadership mantra, I guess, is that every day we're not necessarily looking for the uncertainty, but be prepared to face it when it happens. And this has been a big one for sure.
Well, we've all had to pull out some courage here, and
That's
to,
right.
you know,
Yeah, right.
some courage, and just work through a lot of it. So, but
No
thanks.
kidding.
That's
Yeah.
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 Reference Mr. Maxwell.
Oh yeah, it's a great book if you get a chance. Well, Ann, thank you so much. I'll close up here. Don't go away. But another episode of Business Basics today. Our special guest was Dr. Ann Connors with Family Dentistry up in Iowa City, Iowa. And Ann, thank you again for being here today.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for doing the work you're doing in
Oh,
coaching
thank
and
you.
mentoring. You
Sure.
bet.
Thank you. Take care.